Let's maul in the Central Committee. Let's cringe in the Central Committee. Let's bog in the Central Committee right now.
And apparently the chat wants me to say poggers. As usual, I have no idea why. So that just happened. Let's hope for the best.
It just means you're excited about something. It's very good.
Yeah, it's appropriate. You did it. But it still feels wrong. It still feels wrong somehow.
All right, back on the power panel, new power panel for you guys. Cenk Uygur, Jayar Jackson. Oh no, it's Mike Meyer from Central Committee. Okay, not Mike Meyer or Mike Myers, but Mike Buyer, as in I'm buying what he's selling. And likely I will. We're gonna find out in this hour. Before we get started though, Mike, what's for the folks who at home who don't know, what's Central Committee?
Central Committee is my Twitch show that I do every morning, 9:45 Eastern, 6:45 Pacific, every single day, where we talk about politics from a leftist perspective. I have a history as a Democratic candidate, organizer, campaign manager, finance director. I've ran every single position you could have in a political campaign as a leftist I have had. We've won some, we've lost some. So if you want that kind of analysis every morning, politics from a leftist perspective, Central Committee on twitch.tv.
All right, awesome. And I love the cooperation and different things we've done together. So progressives working together, man. I can't get enough of it. In fact, guys, if you're members today in the post game, Mike's gonna tell us some of those stories of his time in the trenches. Wait. And in one time that Young Turks was involved, and did we win or didn't we? Lots of drama, lots of fun. Okay, so if you're on YouTube, you hit that join button underneath the video. It's underneath the video for a reason. So you support the show and the channel, so we can give you more programming, including if you're joining at the essentials level or higher, the post game. That's what you guys get as membership. Same thing on Twitch, and obviously on Twitch, if you're an Amazon Prime subscriber, it's free for you, and we get the revenue. It's perfect. Are people using hashtag Bezos Bucks? I guess they are. And do I support that? I guess I do. And I'm gonna give one last Twitch shout out here. Rodney1234 did it again. Now 7,500 bits and 10 subs. So Rodney, you're getting a lot of respect here. So as an old school reference, but anyways, love you, brother. Thank you, and to all of you on Twitch. All right, lots of show ahead, so let's get to it. JR, what's up first?
I think we should. I got some analysis for you guys, Mike and Cenk. How about this one?
Yes.
So after Trump's attorneys on Tuesday embarrassed themselves at the impeachment proceedings, they decided to employ the help of a trio, potentially a quartet of Republican senators to help them out as they argue the president's case, the ex-president's case today. So let's go to the story from CNN. Senators Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, Ted Cruz of Texas, and Mike Lee of Utah were all spotted going into a room in the US Capitol that Trump's lawyers were using to prepare for their arguments. Trump lawyer David Schoen said that the senators were, quote, very friendly guys who just wanted to make sure that they were, quote, familiar with procedure on the eve of the rebuttal to the House impeachment manager's presentation. So when asked if it's appropriate for him to meet with senators during this trial, Schoen said, oh yeah, I think that's the practice of impeachment. And he went on to say, there's nothing wrong, there's nothing about this thing that has any semblance of due process whatsoever. So I'm not sure if that necessarily means that he doesn't feel there's any semblance of due process, so therefore let's not follow any rules. Or maybe this is a rule that's just fine. Let's continue on. Cruz also said, and when talking about this, that the meeting with Trump defense team was an opportunity for sharing our thoughts about their legal strategy. So it's gone from there's no due process whatsoever, so who cares, to then Cruz saying that they were sharing their thoughts, which is what I think is pretty obvious that they were doing there. So when asked if he's comfortable with the Trump's team's legal strategy, Cruz also said, I think the end result of this impeachment trial is crystal clear to everybody, which says even more. Really quick before we talk about what Cruz had to say in this first round, John Cornyn was potentially the fourth senator that was involved. Now, one story says there was a trio and included Mike Lee, and the other said that John Cornyn was the third. I'm not sure where, both from CNN by the way, so I'm not sure which numbers and which particular senators were involved, but there was at least three. So John Cornyn was on the defense about his involvement with this, and he said, well, this obviously, it's not a trial in the traditional sense. That would not be appropriate at a trial. but this is a political exercise as much as anything else. So there's no prohibition on that, is what Cornyn said. Obviously, in a normal legal proceeding, that would not be permissible, is what he added. So before we get to Cruz's in-depth defense of what they were going through, so far, is this on the up and up? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I might surprise you guys. I think it is a political trial, and so I don't particularly care. I think that the actual reason they went to go talk to him, and Cruz didn't actually hide it very much at all, is because those defense attorneys are morons. They're terrible. And the reason why they're terrible is because Trump fired every competent attorney, because normal competent attorneys said, no, Mr. President, we're not gonna lie on your behalf. No, we're not gonna tell them that you won the election. And you don't need to do that. That would just get you in further trouble. That's terrible legal strategies. Like, you guys are fired. I don't want lawyers to tell the truth. If I want to tell the truth, I just tell it. I get the lawyers to lie for me, okay? So these clowns decided to take the job, and that's why Cruz and the other guys want to pull him in and go, hey, you guys are sub 70 IQ. So let's just tell you, look, we're all gonna vote for you anyway, you schmucks. Say this instead. So the part of the reason that I object to this is that the press taking it seriously, like the Republicans are honest actors and they were supposed to weigh this seriously and give it like real consideration. Who are we kidding? No, the only thing they care about is political ramifications for themselves. They don't care about the substance of this case even 1%.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna disagree with you on this, Cenk, and just say that it really undercut most of their argument that they made today, which were complaints about due process. They listed elements of crimes, and they really approached the defense being like, hey, you couldn't prove legal sedition under the law. And so if you're saying we're allowed to confer with the jurors because it's not a real trial, and then you immediately make the argument the entire day that he can't be removed from office or excuse me, can't be banned from running again and convicted because you're not following the strict, legal procedures and due process. They totally contradicted their entire defense. So either their defense is totally made up BS, or they are corrupt and they're violating what they say is a wall between like proper conduct with jurors and the defense attorneys.
Yeah, Mike. First of all, how dare you? Okay, no.
Starting off with disagreement.
Right. No, seriously, it's a perfectly good point. And so we're not even really disagreeing. All I'm saying is I'm actually making a case to the press more than I am to anything else, saying, guys, don't treat Republican senators as if they're honest actors. Like, don't waste our time with their stupid legal arguments. They don't have a legal argument. Like the whole thing about, oh, this is not constitutional. It's absurd. We've prosecuted, we've convicted people, impeached and convicted people after they've left office before. There's no ands, ifs, or buts. There's no question it's constitutional. And any logic tells you, no, the president can't murder someone on his way out and go, I'm no longer president, right? So of course you can impeach and convict on that. So we know there's a real case, if you ask me here, on were his words clear enough incitement. But we're not even getting to that question. So an honest defense would be that Trump's lawyers coming out and going, and by the way, they kind of did that today. They said you guys are all going to get primaried if you don't vote for Trump. So that's honest at least. They just come out and go, it doesn't matter if he did it or not. You guys are going to vote with us because you're scared of Trump. I'd go, hey, look, I respect that. And that is exactly what's going to happen.
Well, whatever it is that they did say in this meeting, apparently they see it as okay, but also Cenk, I think you might be in agreement with your boy Senator Ted Cruz, because he went into more in-depth analysis as to the reasons why this is okay. So he tweeted this out. CNN is no longer a news organization. They're Democratic propagandists. Facts that they are ignoring. Number one is that senators are not jurors, he says, as former Democratic Senator Harkin clarified, which he had a link to. And also he said Schumer repeatedly confers with House managers, which is always and fully appropriate. Now let's go to some of the things that he said in that link about this. There was an op-ed from Senator Tom Harkin in the Washington Post, and this is during the first impeachment trial for then President Trump at the time last year in 2020. So I'm gonna quote some of this op-ed from Tom Harkin. And he was talking about the Clinton impeachment in this. Early in that 1999 trial for Clinton, I rose on the Senate floor to raise an objection to House members referring to me and my fellow senators as, quote, jurors. I felt it vital that the role of senators sitting in impeachment be fully understood and based on the Constitution and not defined by labels being used by the press or by ill-informed House members. Rehnquist, which is at the time the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, upheld my objection, saying the Senate is not simply a jury, it is a court in this case. Therefore, counsel should refrain from referring to the senators as jurors, which throughout that CNN article, they point out that they mentioned that the senators that went into that room were supposed to be jurors on this case, and then actually they're conferring and meeting with and planning the defense for Donald Trump with his attorneys. So one more part of that op-ed. So the Rehnquist ruling is clear. The Senate sitting in impeachment is a court composed of 100 judges, not 100 jurors. As judges, they have to make decisions on a wide range of issues: the facts, the public good, how the actions taken by the president impact our democracy, fairness, history, proportionality, and the Constitution. So that's what Cruz was referring to and saying, hey, this has always been the case. We're not really jurors. You guys are making us look even worse than what we really are, which is plenty bad enough in my opinion. But we're actually judges, 100 judges in this case. So 3 to 4 of us judges can go and confer with these guys and figure out what we can do for this particular day, which again, from what we saw today, I'm not sure how much it really is as addressing the issues and pushing back on the arguments that were made by the House managers, or if it's just deflecting, changing the story and actually making us look another way, and even muddying the waters as to exactly what it is that we're fighting about.
So Jayar, as everybody knows, I don't mind anybody disagreeing with me. I actually love it. So Mike's fine, but after 19 years of working together, Jayar, if you say your boy Ted Cruz one more time, we're gonna have issues. Okay. So, but to your point, to be fair to you, I largely agree with almost everything Ted Cruz said there. There's only one thing he got slightly wrong. He said CNN is propagandist. That I even agree with that. But then he said they're Democratic propagandists for the Democratic Party. No, sometimes they are, but in general, they're mainly propagandists for politicians and people in power. So Ted Cruz, they treat you as an honest person who's having an honest debate, and hence they're doing propaganda on your behalf.
Yep.
You're not remotely honest, and you're not having an honest debate at all. You're just doing a political calculation on what's going to help you more in your vote. You have no interest in whether Trump actually did it or not. So CNN is doing you a giant favor by not treating you as the clear, obvious lying scumbag that you are.
Well, I think yes, and this is the thing, and this is what I think Ted Cruz and these other 2 to 3 are trying to avoid, is everyone seeing and knowing that this meeting happened. It can be accepted, and I'm not sure if there's any Democratic senators that came forward and said, I can't believe they're meeting with these with Trump attorneys to talk about strategy. I'm not sure if if any of them are up in arms about this at all, because of the way people meet and talk about what they're gonna do. But what they didn't want was the look of this from the public, seeing them meet with Trump's attorneys, and then after meeting with them, seeing what they do, and like, well, wait a second, these guys are part of the group of senators that's going to be voting on whether or not we impeach and make sure that Trump can never run for president again. All these things, and it just looks bad. It just looks bad, and we already know the main thing that politicians, especially, well, not even today's, forever politicians care about is looking bad. Not whether or not it's really on the up and up or not, whether or not it's a good idea to do this. In the public eye, if they see them doing it, they're worried about being, judged in the court of public opinion. And as the impeachment managers point out today, then potentially getting primaried, potentially losing their seats because they look so bad during this trial. So that's really the fight that he's looking to have, I think.
Yeah, one last thing for me before we go back to Mike. So look, on Ted Cruz, you just heard me call him a liar, right? Now, do you believe me or do you think I'm partisan? Well, I just told you that on this issue, I think Ted Cruz is largely right about jurors versus judges, legal case versus political case. And I actually think he's right on export-import bank, and I can name you. No, that's it. Actually, those are the only 2 issues. Okay, but so when I tell you that he's a liar on other issues, it's because he's a liar on other issues, and he's also a liar that he's taking this case seriously from a legal and political perspective, other than caring about his own ambition and ego. And so I just wish that reporters would be honest and tell us what's actually happening in politics, which is that no one cares about principles or ideas or the actual debate itself.
One thing I would say about this is, CNN and a lot of the mainstream media do this pathological neutrality where they constantly default to treating everything that the Republicans say as if it's the first thing they've ever said. They treat it as if it's good faith. They treat it as it has some sort of background in reality. But I will say this: I don't think we should normalize the fascistic behavior of people like Ted Cruz right now. There was basically a coup attempt or an insurrection, any way you describe it, a violent attempt to prevent a peaceful transition of power that people like Ted Cruz aided and abetted, and them acting corrupt as Trump is being impeached shouldn't be something that gives outrage among people. Yes, we should expect it, but it still should make us very angry when it happens. Just because we know they're scumbags doesn't mean that we should ignore the scumbag behavior. We should be calling it out with extra energy, extra verve. And this is one of the disappointments I have with the Democrats' presentation overall, is they're not linking Trump's criminal behavior with the senators judging him. They should be out there saying if they are acquitted, it's because these Republicans sitting in this chamber are complicit. There is no reasonable chance of conviction because Republicans understand that 75% of their base are dyed-in-the-wool Trumpists, and there's nothing that they can do to change that. And they're in fear. There's an old saying that I like to repeat on my channel that is, Republicans fear their base, Democrats hate theirs. And so Republicans are scared of Donald Trump and the ravenous right-wing base that they represent.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it, Mike. And I also loved the phrase pathological neutrality, because it's true. It doesn't matter what the two sides are. And so I really don't think it's an exaggeration that when fascism came to Europe, and by the way, there's actually New York Times and some of the others that still survive to this day, it's actually, they did do this.
Yes.
They when fascism came to Europe, they were neutral. Some say Mussolini's a good guy, some say he's a bad guy. What are we, reporters? We can't tell, right? And they're doing it again. And so when they say, for example, one of the talking points that I detest is almost every story leads with, 45 Republican senators already voted to say that it's unconstitutional. So this trial has no chance of success. But okay, if you still care, I guess, then we'll tell you about the substance. Barely, right? No, but that's, to Mike's point, that empowers the Republicans to do over-the-top obstruction, because then their partners in crime, the mainstream media, turn around and tell everybody, don't pay attention. Since the Republicans are so corrupt and they're never going to be honest on this, there's nothing interesting to look at here. But they don't add the part about the Republicans being so dishonest and corrupt. Right. They just say, Republicans say they're gonna vote no, so that this trial is irrelevant. No, that's not reporting. That's ironically being a propagandist in favor of Ted Cruz and the Republican Party.
Well, I mean, Ted says it. He said it straight up. We know where this is gonna go. We know why it's gonna go that way, because we're Republicans and we're gonna protect him. He basically said it, so he can indict himself.
Yeah, all right, we gotta take a break, guys. So many exciting stories when we come back. Stay right here. In fact, like and share the stream. We'll be right back. All right, back on TYT. Help spread the progressive message everywhere. Speaking of which, Jayar, take it away.
Let's do it. You guys ready to get upset?
Let's do it.
Conservative financial pundit had an interview on Fox News about the COVID relief package that's being debated, has been debated, and will continue to be debated, specifically about the stimulus check to struggling Americans. And he found a brand new angle to really anger some folks and show just how much he doesn't care. Let's take a look.
Not
Dave,
reality.
You come from an interesting perspective. You talk to Americans across the country every day on your radio program.
Yeah.
What do you believe is the right number or the right answer for the next stimulus check?
Well, I don't believe in a stimulus check, because if $600 or $1,400 changes your life, you were pretty much screwed already. You got other issues going on. You have a career problem, you have a debt problem, you have a relationship problem, you have a mental health problem. Something else is going on if $600 changes your life. And that's not talking down to folks. I've been bankrupt, I've been broke, and I work with people every day who are hurting. I love people. I want people to be lifted up. But this is, again, it is just political rhetoric, and it's just throwing dollars out there. It's peeing on a forest fire. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Absolutely ridiculous. Hey, but he loves people. They just have issues. If 1,600 or 1,400, in addition to the previous 600, if that does anything for your life, you're pathetic, and you brought this on yourself. So apparently you should have been, I don't know, hoarding your billions instead of spending it all, because everyone's got that. Please, we already know where this is going. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I believe it or not, this is going to be my third slight defense of a conservative in this show. Okay, so everybody get ready to get angry. So first of all, is he wrong? Of course he's wrong on the substance. 40% of Americans can't withstand a $400 problem, let alone a $600 or a $1,400 problem, right? So he's really disconnected from a huge percentage of Americans, and that's not surprising given that he's a conservative. So where's my slight defense? So a couple of them. Number one, he's from talk radio, and they talk like this all the time. And his show is, if you ever listen to Dave Ramsey's show, it's nonstop. Cut up your credit cards. The problem isn't your debt. The problem is what led to your debt. So he's speaking in that lingo, but he's doing it in a format that doesn't know the rest of his context. So it comes out as particularly ugly, right? Now, my second defense is biased. So I'm giving you that warning ahead of time. Dave Ramsey, for no reason at all, when TYT was first starting out, helped us when no one else did. Just like advice and helpful stuff and calls here and there. Nobody ever does that. He talked to Dave Kohler and walk us through stuff. So he's a Christian. He talks about Jesus all the time, but he's a rare Christian that actually means it. So, I'm just giving you that background. Now, nonetheless, he's wrong about this topic, of course. And by the way, Joe Sandberg, who's an awesome progressive and the founder of Aspiration, has already challenged him to a debate. And by the way, we'll be your Huckleberry. So if I know Joe wants to do it, if Dave wants to do it, and you can tell I'll definitely be fair to him. They both helped us, right? We'd be happy to host that debate. But Mike, now that I've been too soft, go ahead.
Hold on, wait, Mike. Yeah, so wait, Mike. Yeah. I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna let you finish, Doug. I'm gonna let you finish. But
go ahead.
Just the first slight half defense, Jake, which I don't really think is even a slight defense. You said basically he talks in talk show lingo, so therefore he did it again here and sounds ridiculous. Where's the defense? He talks in talk show lingo, yeah, talk show.
No, I'm saying
doesn't apply to this.
Yeah, I hear you, brother. I hear you. Look, and it is unbelievable that I'm in any way defending conservative talk radio. So I want to be clear about what I'm saying. When Dave Ramsey on his show talks about debt and talks about financial trouble, which is the essence of his show, it's a finance show. He talks about the underlying problems, right? So, and he always tells people to cut up your credit card, believe in Jesus, okay, and solve the underlying problems. He's truncating that here and saying you've got other problems like mental health problems. And then you're like, whoa, without hearing the rest of what he normally says, you go, wait, Dave, you just said people have mental health problems and that's why they're suffering during coronavirus. And that sounds super bad.
All right, so he did not help me, so I can drop a sledgehammer on him. Let me just say this. When he said that he declared bankruptcy, what that means is he got a bailout. And in the clip, the Fox News host talk about moral hazard. There's no bigger moral hazard under that logic than wiping away all your debt. Or I don't know, $4 trillion for Wall Street, which was the first coronavirus stimulus bill. And the thing about these self-help hucksters is that they have no value. People are not in debt because of credit cards or financial products, although that may contribute. It's that because their income is not growing, because productivity is growing up, wealth is being created, and it's 100% being captured by the wealthiest in our society. During coronavirus, every problem with our society has been accelerated. wealth is actually, they're growing their wealth, the billionaires in our society, by nearly $1 trillion since the course of this pandemic. And the rest of us, the bottom 90%, what do you know? We lost $1 trillion. So the reason why this guy is so toxic is people are suffering under coronavirus due to no fault of their own. And the dirty little secret about capitalism is that's true all the time, not just during coronavirus, but when people have unemployment, our system is designed to have a certain level of baseline unemployment. That means some people looking for jobs who are qualified will not find them. That is a feature, not a bug of capitalism. And the purpose of that is to drive down your wages. It is to make you more exploitable. And so when he talks about all this self-help hucksterism of cutting your credit cards up, the reality is Americans have actually topped up their consumption with debt because their wages are flat, and they have been flat for 30 years.
Yeah, so let me back up Mike on the substance. First of all, it's actually 40 years that they've been flat. And in that time, American productivity has nearly doubled. So you have worked your ass off and not gotten any wage increase. And by the way, currently corporate Democrats are screwing you and taking out the increase in minimum wage from the COVID relief bill. So, and by the way, speaking of corporate Democrats screwing you, so who's the person that made it nearly impossible to get rid of student debt? Joe Biden. He was the author of the bankruptcy bill, and the bankruptcy bill is the one that said, if you're a student, you're never able to get rid of your debt. On the other hand, as Mike just pointed out, Dave Ramsey just said, "Oh yeah, I went bankrupt and he's fine now." Right? Donald Trump went bankrupt 6 times and he's totally fine. The rich are always fine, right? But you can't get rid of your debt because of Republicans and corporate Democrats.
Well, and it's important to notice one thing, Cenk, about this is they don't want you to get rid of your student loan debt, right? Which is debt that you did to build your personal capital. And you get a degree, but you don't have any assets at the end of it. So your balance sheet, your balance sheet insolvent. If you have student loan debt and no assets, you are actually legally qualified to be bankrupt, except it's student loan debt and we exclude that. And so you can't declare bankruptcy for student loans. And in fact, people used to declare bankruptcy for student loans until that bankruptcy bill that Joe Biden wrote 15 years ago. So that is why so many people are struggling. And it's so disgusting whenever you watch a businessman who's declared bankruptcy, had his debt washed away by who? Big Daddy government. That's what bankruptcy is. It's the government stepping in, telling creditors, enough is enough. You get a piece of what this guy has, and that's it. And then we move on with a fresh start. And to say that it's okay for him, but not for you, because you went and tried to get an education or because of coronavirus is absurd. And to talk down about a stimulus check that obviously millions of people need is frankly disgusting to me.
Yeah, I can't help but jump in one more time. I don't know if it was one last time. So number one on Dave Ramsey, we have no idea what his opinion on student loan debt is, to be fair, right? But generally for Republicans and conservatives, they love that you can't get rid of that debt. And I'm not sure I agree with Mike on the unemployment point he made. It's a great one. It's a really interesting one and one that maybe we could debate another time. But the student loan debt one is definitely a function of runaway capitalism, because it is not something that is naturally created by the markets. It is a law artificially passed by corrupt politicians paid off by corporations. And why do they want that? It's not just the bankers that wanted that passed. It was all other corporations as well. Why? Because if you're forever indebted, you must work for corporate America. If you don't work for corporate America, you can't get rid of that debt. It turns you into indentured servants. That's why they love that law. That's why it was an abomination. And Biden still has never apologized for it, never looked to undo it. And that's why we talk about not just Republicans, but corporate Republicans and Democrats screwing all of us over to help their donors.
Well, considering you were talking about the indentured servitude and the fact that people have to do it this way, and that you can add that to the list of things that Ramsey was talking about are your issues. Mental health, you have problems with your career, you have problems with your relationships, I think he went through. And also this little problem of $600 to $1,400 is just peeing on a forest fire, which won't get you anywhere, right? Maybe it should be more. Usually if you pee on a forest fire and then it doesn't go out, what they do is then they bring in some larger hoses. Maybe they bring in, especially in California, since it's hard to access a lot of these things, they bring in the airplanes to drop all this red dust, chemical fire retardant stuff to put on the fire. So if we're not doing enough, maybe we should do more. I'm just saying, he brought up the point about peeing on a forest fire does nothing. You're right, $600, $1,400 is peeing on a forest fire. Maybe we should put it out. Maybe we should start putting out the forest fires rather than watching them burn. And then when we pee on them, go, hey, that's enough for you, guy. And then move on and ask them why they haven't put out their fires yet. Either way it goes, right after he said that nice little fun analogy, Bill Hemmer, Dana Perino, and he had a nice little chuckle at the expense of the folks that is their reality, that forest fire that they're trying to pee on. Let's just take a look at that part.
And I imagine that does not work. As I visualize it. Dave Ramsey, thank you.
Great to have you on. I hope you come back, Dave.
Yeah, that's the problem, and then we're laughing about it. So as people can't feed their family, as people are having trouble trying to figure out if they're gonna stay in their house, maybe they're gonna have to move out. Maybe tents is the next place. Where are my kids gonna go? I have no idea what's gonna happen. But on Fox News is the response. I don't know, man. That part just really annoyed me.
Yeah,
I know you get to laugh, but I mean, I'm sorry.
No, JR, man, your point about the forest fire is unassailable. There's no question, you're right. It's like they're laughing about a forest fire, but doing nothing to put it out. They're like, the fire's gonna burn you all down. Good luck trying to pee on it. Okay, so anyways, look guys, I'm gonna turn it to a lighter note during the post game. So the post game's for members. I'm gonna tell you about when I started a fire in my backyard and how disastrous it turned out. You're gonna love that story.
Oh, I know. Oh, I love that story.
Okay, so if you want to be a member, hit the join button below. If you're watching on YouTube, it's super easy, and at the essentials level and higher, and you could upgrade through that same button. You get all of our post games, including the one about the fire in my backyard. And on Twitch, it's actually free if you have Amazon Prime, but we get the revenue, so it's awesome. Please do that, twitch.tv/TYT, and everywhere else, tyt.com/join. We have a blast during the post games that are just for members. It's much more laid back. It's fun, personal stories, including of me almost literally burning down the house. Okay, all right, we got to take a break here, guys. When we come back, more disastrous stories. All right, back during the break here. Mike and Brett just pointed out that Dave Ramsey does talk about student loan debt, and he's apparently a disaster on it. So just fair is fair. We just wanted to clear the record on that one. 88 BPM in our member section writes in, more Mike from PA on TYT, please. So lots of love for Mike out there. That's awesome. Agreed. Jay Brown, on the other hand, says 3 separate defenses for conservatives from Cenk. Quick, someone get him some Too Strong coffee. He needs a reset. Well, ask and you shall receive. So here it is. Okay. And by the way, toostrongcoffee.com/TYT. If you've never had it, it is delicious. That's what happens apparently if you have organic coffee. Organic and fair trade, and gives money to progressive causes like Justice Democrats, and yells at right wingers online. So it's not playing, it's called Too Strong for a reason. toostrongcoffee.com/TYT. And they have a Valentine's Day special. I think it's still going, and I think it's still inappropriate. So check it out. Okay, so no more trigonometry writes in, the official Herman Cain Twitter account still tweets out debunked lies about being COVID, about being COVID over exaggerated and calling it a hoax. So that was when we're discussing how low Republicans will go. Herman Cain died from coronavirus, but his family members and the people who run his website and his social media are still tweeting about how it's a hoax because they're making money off of that. Oh, it's just like beyond repulsive, like no sense of decency at all, ever. All right, and then by the way, BC Trumpet, the Produce Dragon on Super Chat says, referring to Dave Ramsey saying he's looking out for us. They make us step on each other's throats while calling us family, right? No, that's not how you treat family. That's exactly right. Oh, and I got to read this one. No Slap basically, I guess, wrote in on Super Chat as well. When Castor, the Trump's lawyer, said, who asked that about whether the lawyers thought Trump won the election, which is a good question. And Bernie yelled, I did. And the commenter says, the absolute GOAT. He is indeed. All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk, Jayar, and Mike with you guys. One last reference to Twitch, it might not be actually. Progressive NCO gifted 14 subs. So you guys are on fire today, really appreciate it. And apparently the chat wants me to say poggers. As usual, I have no idea why. So that just happened, let's hope for the best. And for all of you folks out there, I was about to call you poggers, it's probably a bad idea. Remember, Common Room's on Twitch tonight. It's at 9 o'clock Eastern, and it's about love and Valentine's Day. So you're gonna love it. Twitch.tv/TYT. All right, Brett, you gonna tell me what it is? No? All right, okay. I like to just stumble into things on air without really checking.
It just means you're excited about something. It's very good.
Yeah, it's appropriate. You did it. But it still feels wrong. It still feels wrong somehow.
By the way, so Mike's on here. He's got a show called Central Committee on Twitch. And he spent half the hour going like this when I'm talking.
I was saying I wish we could see his responses to everything.
All right, we got to squeeze more stories in. JR, go ahead.
Let's go real quick. So as we all know, Georgia was the state that ended up flipping the Senate in favor of Democrats with the elections of Ossoff and Warnock in those special runoffs. So in response to that, Georgia officials appeared to be trying to find a way to make sure that does not happen again. So they're investigating cases about groups that helped mobilize voters, particularly voters that are mostly disenfranchised and kept from the voting system altogether. So something absolutely needs to be done about that. There's been a couple cases that they did refer to the board that they want prosecuted, figured out immediately. So the first case from The Guardian. In 2019, investigators in Georgia, they allege that there was one group that's, this is Stacey Abrams' group called the New Georgia Project. They said that group violated state law by not handing in 1,268 voter registration applications within the 10 days required under state rules. Also, in their information, Warnock, who was the Democrat who won that election, is named as a respondent in the case because he was listed as the CEO of the New Georgia Project at the time. And in fact, the organization has said that the corporate document filings within the state misidentified Warnock as its CEO when his actual title with the group was board chairman. So that's just one caveat of it, speaking about how Warnock was listed on it, but it does make it look more like this was a concerted effort. But let's go back to the whole point of this first issue, was that 1,268 voter registration applications were supposed to be in within 10 days. That didn't happen, so we need to investigate and figure out what all is going on. And of course, this will be legal proceedings, things that could potentially tie up the normal process for these groups, which is actually one of the things that they did say. So before I get to the second case that they're concerned about, one of the heads of these groups did say, so when we've got these kinds of filings happening, court cases being brought up over things like this, what it does do is take away time, money, and energy that you would have towards doing our normal routine, which is getting voters registered, make sure they go out, make sure they know when voting days are, just things that are usually kept from these types of voters. And we already know the Voting Rights Act always gets pushed back and is hotly contested, and Republicans want nothing to do with it because obviously the more people vote, the fewer Republicans get elected. So moving on to the second case before you guys jump in on each of these. It involves an individual canvasser from the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda, which is another group that's helping to get voters in. So that one, the state board referred, they dealt with a canvasser from that group that played an instrumental role in registering new voters. That canvasser allegedly submitted 70 false voter registrations while working on behalf of the group. Gasp. Well, so that is a bad thing. So there's the thing, Helen Butler, who was an executive director of the group, said that the group caught that the person that was forging that voter registration applications in 2019, and that she was the one who reported the canvasser to the Secretary of State's Office for Investigation. This part of it was not mentioned in the press release that Raffensperger office put out just on Thursday. So anytime there's someone that's within the group that's doing something that is out of bounds, that isn't helpful to what we're doing, is illegal, you would hope that the group would get rid of that person, report them, make sure that activity stops. It's exactly what happened. But in the meantime, those parts of the information have not been included in these briefings and in these cases that they have against these groups. So how big are these cases, you guys?
Yeah, they're non-existent. They're total lies. So let me be clear. So Rapsenberger and Kemp in Georgia stood up to Trump in some ways, and Rapsenberger in a lot of ways. But I don't want you to get mistaken for who they really are. They're massive right wingers, and they probably lead the country in cheating before an election, but they just didn't want to do it after the election. So the way they cheat before an election is they do voter purges, they shut down as many voters as possible, especially in Democratic areas, and honestly, especially in black areas. And so here they are going after a group that registers voters because they don't want people voting. And that's how they cheat before the election. So they put a ton of costs on them, just as the Stacey Abrams group mentioned. Now, the substance of it is super clear. The group is the one that turned in the people who did the fraudulent ballots. How could you prosecute them when they're the ones who brought in the bad guys? That makes no sense at all. That just means I'm a political hack. I want you guys to lose the election. I'm gonna be in the election. I want to win. So I'm gonna try to hurt you in every way conceivable and in some ways that are not conceivable. The other violation was, you're supposed to turn in the ballots within 10 days and they missed that technical deadline. Was it because they were trying to hide Republican voters or anything? No. Was there any fraud? No. But it's a technical violation. No, it's totally bad faith to attack Democratic, and in this case, honestly, black voters to make sure they vote less.
One of the things, because I've done work like this before myself with registering voters, the thing about these kind of technical laws and the strictness of something like a 10-day voter registration return, it's to chill and intimidate organizations from doing voter registration drives. Because if you could face legal liability because a couple voter registrations fall in the crack somewhere in your trunk of your car, a lot less people are going to want to be willing to go out there and register voters, which is one of the most difficult things you can actually do in politics. Is find people and register them to vote. So, and the other thing is like having one canvasser who was bad faith, who was probably being paid to get knock doors or do something, and registering voters is very difficult, hard work. And somebody turned in some fake registrations and was caught by that organization. It's pretty clear that they were working in good faith, and they had one employee go rogue, do a bad act. And the way Republicans act is that group is doing something we don't want done. Registration of young people, registration of people of color, registration of leftists. So we're going to attack the whole process because of one individual bad actor and tar the good efforts to try to improve our democracy. So that's why we need to really get the Voting Rights Act passed in this Congress. We have to pressure every single Democrat to get House Resolution 1, the John Lewis Vote Advancement Act passed immediately, because it does things like provide automatic voter registration and things that we need in this country if we're going to defeat Republican attempts to voter suppress.
Yeah, one more thing that's important. They get to use taxpayer money to attack this group, but the group is using your money, small dollar donations, to fight back. So they're bleeding them dry while using your money in both ways. And there's a great irony here. The Rapsenberger defended the democracy against Trump. But once they get into power in Georgia, they immediately try to change the rules to subvert democracy so they could never lose power. All right.
Paul Weyrich did say a long time ago, I don't want everybody to vote. This is a Republican. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been. We want fewer people to vote. That's how we keep winning. Republican 101.
Paul Weyrich founded the Heritage Foundation and many other right-wing think tanks that dominate today. That's always been their philosophy.
If you want more leftists on this platform and other platforms that actually go into deep dives about issues like finance and electoral politics, you're never gonna find a better stream than this one. Here's some things you can do. I posted YouTube content constantly. We had another Jimmy Dore video. We had a not safe for stream debate with conservatives where Vosh and I and Denims debated with a bunch of conservatives about voter fraud. You have the dumbass takes of uniting with fascists. Get in there. Get in there.